But I wonder what would happen if we would just pause for a moment. So out of all your questions around what is the point of life and what's next and what's after this life and all those questions that we all have, let's just push pause and maybe let's ask the right question. So one of the biggest questions that every single one of us have to answer is, what's the point of life? Why am I here? What's my purpose in life? I think that every single person who's ever been born wrestles with that question. There's a great tension in my purpose on being alive. And I feel like in many ways, our life is kind of a pursuit of that. It's like every day we're alive, we're trying to figure it out more and more and more. And by the way, it doesn't stop just when you figure out your career. I think so many times we associate kind of our purpose and who am I and what's the point of life around what we do. In fact, I think we ask the wrong question. So let's just start here. I think often we don't even ask the right question when we're asking, what is the point of life? I think sometimes we ask the question around, what's the point of life? What am I supposed to do? What school am I going to go to? How am I going to figure this out? When is this going to happen? And those are all fair questions, by the way, when it comes to just life. It's fair to ask those questions. And those are important things that we need to know. Like, I think it's great that we're trying to pursue different things in our life. But I wonder what would happen if we would just pause for a moment. So out of all your questions around what is the point of life and what's next and what's after this life and all those questions that we all have, let's just push pause and maybe let's ask the right question. And I think the right question is a who question. It's who am I? I think before we can answer the question of what is the point of life and what's my purpose on this planet, it's probably more important to wrestle with who you are and who are you becoming. So just a simple example. So I'm married, been married for over 30 years, and I have 2 kids. And the question I shouldn't ask is, how do I be a better husband, or how do I become a better father? Maybe the better question is, who do I need to become in order to fill those roles? And so it's a way to look more inward first. And again, all those other questions that all of us are asking, the point of life and my career and who am I going to marry, it all starts with me, though. Like, I need to wrestle with who am I? And so I wonder how you would answer that question. Who are you? Not what are you? And I think so often our purpose gets wrapped up and our identity gets wrapped up in what we do. In fact, I talk to a lot of people, and when we start to talk about just who we are as people, it's quick. It always amazes me how quickly we go to what we do. So tell me a little bit about yourself. So if I was like, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself, how would you answer that question? Would you immediately go to, well, I'm an attorney, or I'm a student, or I'm a father, or I'm a husband or wife, whatever it is? How quickly we go to that. Which, again, what we do isn't necessarily bad. I think the problem is that we wrap up the purpose of life in what we do. Your identity is not your job. Like, that's not your ultimate identity. Your ultimate identity is not even a mom or a dad or a friend or a student. That's not your ultimate identity. So the origin of who am I, and answering the question, what is the point of life? I think sometimes we chase after career, we chase after family, we chase after money or success. And again, I think we're always careful to say those things in and of themselves aren't bad. Career isn't bad, family's not bad, money's not bad, success isn't bad. But how often do you still feel empty? So I think that's the indicator, right? I think the indicator is maybe you're pursuing all these things and you still feel empty. You still have questions. So if you're in your journey and you're still wondering what is the point of life, and yet you're doing all these things, then maybe those things aren't the answer. And so what does it all mean? So then we get philosophical. We start reaching out. We start pursuing all these things because we're trying to find our purpose in life. So let's start with why are you here? That's a great question, isn't it? Just a nice, easy, why are you on this planet? Why do you have life? Why does your life even matter? Why does what you do matter? So I think we have to start with the reality and a reminder. And I don't know what your belief is. And so you're obviously watching this video. And I don't know what your core belief is in God, in the universe, in yourself, or anything. But I will tell you that the reason why you're here is not an accident.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Cam. I'm the creative arts pastor here at Crossroads. Real quick, I want to let you know that if you have any further questions, we would love to be a resource to help you find those answers. The link for that is in the description below. Also, we want to remind you to like, comment, and make sure to share this video with anyone that's asking the same questions you're asking. All right, let's get back to the video.
And I think I want you just to hear that from me. You're not an accident. You're not a mistake. Your life is not an accident. Your life is not a mistake. In fact, if we go to the Bible, which I think is the source, a good source to go from, and if we go to Psalm 139, starting in verse 13, it says, you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. And then the writer says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows that very well. I think that's very interesting. So the writer here is acknowledging that the God of the universe knitted him together in his mother's womb. And when you think about life in that regard, how can any life be an accident? You're not. God formed you and knitted you together. And what I think is interesting is the psalmist says that my soul knew it. It wasn't just that my mind knew it. It wasn't just that my lips proclaimed it. I knew somewhere in my soul, I knew that I was formed by a creator. He goes on and says, my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were for me, when as yet there was none of them. When we answer the question, what's my purpose? It's coming from a place honestly at a soul level, not at a career path level or success level. Because before you took your first breath, God already knew you because he created you. And so at the soul level is where we find the answer. So if he says that in my soul knew there's something in there. In other words, there's something in all of us. And I would just throw this to you, the listener and the watcher. There's a reason why you're asking the question, what is the point of life? There's a reason why every single person who's ever been born is asking the question, what is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? And the answer actually is found in Ecclesiastes. The writer of Ecclesiastes has a verse in chapter 3, verse 11. And if I think about the longing that we have for purpose, if I think about just you and I as we're trying to fill this empty void, because that's really the pursuit, right? The pursuit that you have and the pursuit that I have is about how do I fill this void that I sense inside of my life? How do I fill that purpose? Because I feel a little meaningless, or I feel like I'm just drifting, and maybe you feel like the career just isn't hitting it. Well, there's a reason for that. There really is. There's a reason why we feel this longing. And Ecclesiastes 3:11, it says that he, referring to God, has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he put eternity into man's heart so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. That little phrase there, he has put eternity into man's heart. What that means is that there is a longing of our soul that will never be satisfied until it finds rest in God. All of us are born with this restlessness of pursuit of purpose. We're all born with this drive to do something with our life. Why do you think that is? It's not accidental, because you're not an accident. And maybe it's because everybody's heart has this spot that is longing for eternity, that's longing for purpose, that's longing for meaning in life. And I'm telling you, your heart and my heart, we will feel empty. And because of the emptiness, it will drive us to want to fill that void with something. That's why there's a lot of people that fill that void with unhealthy things, because you can fill that void with healthy and unhealthy things. And even healthy things taken to extremes can become unhealthy. So if I feel unsettled, if I don't feel happy, if I'm drifting, if I'm trying to find my purpose in life, then I'm going to try to fill that. And so I could become a workaholic. I could fill it with relationships, even unhealthy relationships. I could fill it with substance abuse. I could fill it with food. I could fill it with hobbies. I could fill it with fitness. I could fill it because I want to go running all the time and why? Again, some of those things aren't bad, but what are we actually trying to do? What are you trying to do when you're that driven? Well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to fill a spot that only God can fill. You're trying to find purpose in all these other things in life. You're trying to find purpose in everything else. And we're all made on purpose and with purpose and for purpose. So how do we fill this gap? How do we fill this void? Because there's this inner longing for something not temporary, but for something eternal. And until we find God, what happens is we start to search for everything temporary, even the good things. And the Bible is very clear. You're not bringing anything with you into eternity. As a pastor, I've done a lot of funerals, and nobody ever brings anything with them into eternity. It's just their soul. It's who they are. And so all the things that we're pursuing here on this earth, it's all going to go away eventually. You can't take any of it with you, even the good things, even the great careers and the great friends and family and all the toys we have and everything we have in life, our money. None of that goes with us. We just stand before Jesus. As the writer says, naked you form me, and naked I go back to the womb. And so this is kind of the irony that we have in life, that we try to fill this void with nothing that we can bring to the next place. So let me kind of wrap up a little bit. If I think about purpose and I think about the meaning of life, I would say and offer that you will not find true purpose until you find Jesus. And that's not just being a pastor. That's not just being, a religious person. That's from personal experience, that Jesus is not just the answer. He embodies purpose. So Jesus just doesn't give you purpose, in other words. He doesn't just offer you a way forward. He actually is your purpose. That is why we're here. So the core purpose of who am I, the first place is I'm a child of God. That's who I am. And if I get that right, everything else out of that makes a little bit more sense. And I think the problem is that we don't find our purpose in Jesus first. And so we're surrounding that vacancy and that void with all this other stuff. In John 10:10, it says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus says, I came to give you life and to have it abundantly. So Jesus, in his own words, says, I've actually come to give you life. Now, you're already alive, so he's not giving you like that kind of life. So what kind of life is he talking about? We already know that God created you and formed you. So Jesus says, I came to give you life. I came to give you meaning. I've come to give you purpose in life. This is what Jesus is saying. He's anchoring your life into something that is going to last for eternity. So what's the point of life? What's the meaning of life? Well, it's not just about building your own story. It's about living in God's story that he has for you. It's about living your life in God through Jesus. That's our purpose. So as you are sitting here and maybe wrestling with what am I supposed to do with my life, and who am I going to marry, and what school am I going to go to, and what career am I going to have, and what's going to happen at retirement, like it's a whole nother thing of like your purpose just on this planet. You kind of keep changing and morphing, and it's okay because we all have a purpose, if you will, in a career path and with friends and family. That's all fine. Just don't miss the core purpose. The core purpose is found in Christ and Christ alone. Why? Because you were made in his image. He created you, knitted you together. He is our ultimate purpose. So before you start jumping to what and how and when and where, I would just offer you to pause for a moment and think about who. Who are you?